Good day. I'm delighted to be able to join this important international wheat conference in Sargoda, and I'm grateful to Professor Nurka and his colleagues for the invitation to join and share some ideas. I'm sorry I can't be here in person, but hope we can extend dialogue and collaborate in the future. So what have we done as geneticists and wheat breeders over the last 62 years? Well, here we can see that world wheat yields have increased in line with those from Pakistan in the blue line, and both substantially faster than the increase in the world's population. Of course, this has meant that the vast majority of the world's population have better nutrition than ever from this most important of the world's crops. It also, though, has been at a cost to the environment. So while the first half of my career, up to about 2020, was to do with feeding the exponentially increasing population, for which, of course, there was a huge imperative that we had to do that, but unfortunately, this has been at a cost to the environment, and we all see evidence for that all around us, whether in temperatures, water, pollution, and so forth. So we're changing the model now to continue to produce the amount of wheats that we've been producing up until now, but doing it much more sustainably, with much less impact on the environment. Just to show how things are changing, here are the current and predicted levels of the world population, and you can see that outside Africa, we're now very close to the peak world population, and relatively small changes in production will feed those people better than they ever have been. If we look at another way of showing that same data, here are the fertility rates, and you can see most of the world outside Africa and actually Pakistan and some of the countries to the north. But other than that, the world's population is declining slowly. So therefore, we need to change what we're doing to be more sustainable. And that's what I'm going to be talking about, some of the ways we can do that in the next few slides. About 50% of the improvement that we've seen in wheat yield has come from genetics and 50% from agronomy. But over the last 25 years, more of that has come from the genetic component. And here we can see that about 3/4 of the improvement has come from genetics in recent years, in this wonderful slide from the late Ian McKay, one of the rather few analyses of these. Of course, there is still a yield gap that we don't have the world leading yields of 20 tons per hectare perhaps, but are averaging 4 or less. But that yield gap might be one of the ways that we can improve production without increasing the land and input usage. I can think of farming as being a cycling, self-maintaining ecosystem here with inputs of the propagules, but also the diseases and the pests, crop protection chemicals, and then the environmental inputs of light, heat, water, gases, carbon dioxide, for example, and oxygen, and the nutrients. And our idea as farmers is to extract the maximum amount of energy from this in terms of food, in terms of fuel, and in terms of feed, but do that without collapsing the self-maintaining ecosystem, without going into the collapse that would otherwise happen. And that's certainly some systems where that has happened, where one of those inputs has been seriously destroyed by the collapsing ecosystem. So what can we do to stop this? Well, we need this sustainability that I've been talking about. And with the increases in sustainability, we need biotic and abiotic resistances. We need better quality and uses and robustness. And that's one of the recent books from Professor Nurka on use of biofortification in relation to food security, so we certainly need to improve quality, but we most importantly need to maintain production and yield. So where will these changes come from? Well, this is my one letter I've ever had in the newspaper Financial Times, where we point out a Nobel Prize winner economist, Robert Solow, who says that inputs in terms of resources, labor and capital, and technological progress lead to improvement, economic or societal. But technological change is the most important. And I think there's no doubt that that also applies to agriculture and plant breeding, as well as to the industrial output that Winner Solar was referring to. So one important way, of course, is exploiting novel germplasm. The slide in the background shows wheat crosses being made. And I'm very optimistic that there is enough genetic variation that we can improve our crops, and those are basically available for everybody throughout the world, and there's a breeding role for national, international governments and organizations to be involved, as well as the private sector at both small and large companies. I think that will enable us to increase the germplasm pool, and I've got a couple of examples here. This is one which we worked with, where on the right-hand side you can see the wheat streak mosaic virus has virtually reduced that plant to a yellow, poorly plant with minimal production, compared to those that incorporate germplasm from the wild species Thinopyrin intermedium or Elymus intermedium, which we're working with very extensively at the moment in a collaboration. And that introgression of that wild characters is giving this novel source of resistance. In fact, in work with Niaz Ali from Hazara in Pakistan, he showed that there were both a wheat rye chromosome translocation and a Thinopyrin intermedium translocation in the most successful of these lines, with the introgression for the wheat streak mosaic virus and put better tolerance to the aphid infection of spreading that virus. Another example is shown here with introgression of a gene from the tetraploid wheat Aegilops ventricosa, preventing the cereal falling over, as seen in the lower right here. In the left, with that gene, the crop isn't falling over because there's no Pseudocercus perilla. It's resistant to that, which rots the base of the stem, so the plant falls over. There are other important things that we can do as well, and one of those is to improve our analytical techniques. And this is a recent article on using epistasis and pleiotropy, where one can use new systems of analysis to capture missing heritability and increase the understanding of complex gene networks, such as the ones in blue in the top panel, which are below the conventional threshold of significance, but with analysis you can show how important they are to generating improved wheat lines. Another example that we need to do is to understand not just the genetics of the crop, but also the genetics of all the associated microbiome and the rhizosphere as positive effectors, and as negative effectors, of course, the diseases. And this is complex, but it means that we can now need to understand these differences. In my final series, we're wanting to look at the evolution in a bigger picture, to use this gene, use all of the different genes that are available. And of course, there is a new way that we can do that using the large language models and the generative transformers. And I think this is going to transform what we are able to do in the future. So generating foundational large language models for crop plant genomes, we have a vision to decode the grammar of the genomes and explain them, identifying key genomic features and tracking evolutionary changes. This will include using convolutional neural networks to detect local patterns and transformers, pre-trained transformers, to model complex sequential data in the same way as the generative pre-trained transformers, GPTs, do for human languages, and capturing long-range dependencies. And these, of course, will have huge impact on understanding quality, genes, traits, quality, climate resilience, and so forth. So I hope that these all will fit within the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, and in particular, as well as the no poverty and zero hunger and the life on land, we should be able to as well importantly have partnerships worldwide for these goals. So thank you very much. I'm very happy that I might have the opportunity to talk to you more about this, and hope that we can improve wheat using genetics and improve the sustainability in the next period. Thank you very much.